All right, guys. So I started writing periodically for a group called King David's Journal. Person that reached out to me asked that I start contributing, and I think he has at least the right message, and as long as he lets me write, kind of from the perspective that I try to bring, I think I'll do my best. So King David's Journal. Please look them up, add them to your RSS feed. I'm not expecting you to agree with all of their viewpoints, but they are pretty much a journal that is concerned a little more with Middle Eastern issues, also Israel and Palestine issues. So I do have something to say about that. Not always something relevant to the rest of my channel, but there is something that I found necessary to talk about, given that there's these BDS laws that are coming around and have been passed in some states, including in Texas as well as Kansas, probably a few other states. I think in New York State there might be some sort of executive order from the governor concerning BDS. And in this article, I go through some of the background on BDS. There's really a lot that you could talk about. The BDS movement is boycott, divestment, and sanctions, meaning that the organizers want to begin this process of ostracizing Israel in the same manner that apartheid South Africa was ostracized in the 70s and 80s, with the hope of ending what they call the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. So that's broadly what they believe, but in reality, they also, I would say, they do believe in the destruction of Israel, full stop. They don't believe in it lasting as a country, as a Jewish state, in any form. I think that their efforts to bring about equal rights in Israel are really in bad faith, because in reality, if you look at the rights of non-Jewish citizens in Israel, they far surpass those of a citizen of South Africa, a non-white citizen of South Africa during apartheid. I think that there's no way to compare the two. Now, I'm not going to say that there isn't any discrimination, but if you're talking about legal measures of discrimination, it's much more of an easy. It's much more of an equal footing for an Arab or other non-Jewish citizen of Israel than a black South African or any. By the way, there were a lot of Indian and Chinese and also mixed race South Africans during apartheid. So I go through a lot of the background in it, and even this clip from Turkish TV of Omar Barghouti, and the fact is that if you watch this clip, which I don't think I'm going to go through right now, we might use it for a longer segment sometime this week or next week. Even Omar Barghouti, who is the founder of the BDS movement, who did, I believe, he did his doctorate at Tel Aviv University. So in a certain sense, he's almost violating. I think they basically wrote into the BDS movement a couple cop-out clauses, as I would call them, for people who live there and are trying to bring about BDS. Well, they're still able to go to school there. They're still able to benefit from the state's educational infrastructure. So this person, if his efforts were to succeed, then his degrees wouldn't mean jack squat. His doctorate is from the University of Tel Aviv. So, he's basically telling people to boycott all the other people who took part in the program with him, as well as himself, if you were really to stay true to the message. Okay? So, the BDS movement, in my opinion, has been a failure if you're talking about achieving the goal of economic isolation of Israel. In reality, like it or hate it, the country is becoming more and more connected worldwide to other countries. The Arab world is more and more connected to Israel. There's talk of more normalization of ties between a number of the countries that don't have official economic relations with Israel. And if you don't like that, then you can go complain to the leaders of Saudi Arabia and some of the Gulf states, which I don't think that we should just pretend that those are great countries either. I don't think you have to necessarily agree with the viewpoints of the Israeli government or of Israel as a whole, but the people who would say that BDS is a huge threat, I think or that they're promoting BDS as kind of this method of toppling Israel's oppression, as they would call it. They don't have any results to show to their name. In fact, you could probably say that it's been a colossal failure for several years. A lot of the high tech companies, some of the companies that you and I are currently fighting against because of their censorship activities. Well, for years they were developing some of their products in Israel. Some not just tech companies. Not just like Google and Twitter and all. I don't even think Twitter has, but I know for a fact that Google, I think, has a facility there. But a lot of the computer manufacturers, it's a country where you have a large tech-savvy, educated population, and as such, big tech does go there, and they're benefiting economically from our technological boom. So no, BDS has been a failure. A lot of their boycotts are kind of a joke because they try to get these supermarkets to stop selling pickles and coffee that are manufactured in Israel, grown, manufactured, whatever. So he claims that BDS has been a great success, but it hasn't. So another issue I would see is that they do things. For example, this is a story of some Jordan, and they love this. This is the electronic intifada. But notice how pathetic of an accomplishment this is. There was a show being filmed in Jordan where people noticed that there were street signs and license plates that showed Israeli markings on them. And two of the actors in this show started to say, well, we hope we're not involved with any Israelis. That would violate our principles. So they pulled out of the production and claimed, well, we're opposing any sort of cultural engagement with Israel, which I guess is fine, except for the fact that the producers later clarified that there had never been any Israelis involved, that this was, they basically just created a number of fake street signs in order to help with their production. And if anything, it seems that this movie, which isn't out yet, appears to be a little more sympathetic to the Palestinians than to the Israelis. So really, what you're talking about is an effort that is trying to say, well, not only can you not you can't just buy Israeli goods. That's not enough. You can't use services from Israeli companies. That's also not enough. You can't even have a production that features Israeli actors. Okay? And they were under the impression that these were Israeli Jewish actors. So that's factually, that would be religious / ethnic discrimination. But in point of fact, those people didn't end up being Israeli anyway. So what exactly are they protesting? It's really a huge joke. And the BDS people are so inconsistent that they're flying this story as if it's a huge accomplishment. What did they accomplish? They kind of just hindered a Jordanian production, joint Jordanian, I think it was New Zealand and American production. So in reality, it's efforts like this, efforts like Roger Waters trying to get a cover band, a Pink Floyd cover band from appearing in Israel. What does that actually gain you? Nothing. It's people who believe in activism for the sake of activism. So what I think is a huge miscalculation on the other side is that these people think that the answer to the BDS movement, which is already failing, that has almost no accomplishments to their names, is to promote laws that prevent people who support BDS from getting government contracts. Now, I think that there is some misinformation out there that says that, well, you can get fired from your job for supporting BDS. If that is true, I think that type of law would probably be struck down on constitutional grounds. But I think even some of the laws that are a little looser, that concern merely being a contractor, I think those will get struck down as well. I don't think that you can legislate people's opinions regarding American relations with foreign governments, whether it's Israel, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Ukraine. I think it's wrong. I think it does a massive disservice to whatever cause that these people are trying to promote, whether it's the Israeli, the pro-Israeli movement or whatever. Those people are so short-sighted. They don't realize, first of all, if the law is upheld, then you will see a lot of people being penalized that originally they're not necessarily considered very courageous people necessarily. Well, I mean, if you're boycotting something that you have very little effect on, how big of effect are you having? Nobody really thinks that it's that big of a deal. But if you're victimized, so to speak, or if you end up suffering repercussions because of this boycott, which is you can't deny it, form of peaceful resistance or peaceful opposition, then that actually delivers a win to the other side. Now, if the law is struck down by the Supreme Court, okay, and it could be struck down by the Supreme Court. I don't know if it will. There's actually this there's this article from Volok Conspiracy, which is a very good law. Despite the name, it's kind of, Volok Conspiracy is a legal blog that is now hosted by Reason, which is a libertarian. It's a libertarian journal, and they try to say, well, technically the latest BDS law, which is being used to, it's being claimed that it has led to the resignation or loss of the job of Baya Amawi of Texas. In reality, they've misinterpreted the law, and in reality, she would not have been fired under the law. It might be that she just decided not to sign the contract, even though she could have easily signed the contract, because as an individual, the law does not cover her. It only covers a business that would be contracting with the state of Texas. In my opinion, it doesn't matter. Okay, let's say that now in her case, yes, it could be true that she wasn't covered by that law. Now, but what about once the time comes when there is a company that might be contracting with the state of Texas or in the state of Kansas, state of New York that does have such a something in their charter or in their mission statement where they say, well, we support BDS, blah blah blah. I think that would be struck down too. Why? Because of things like Citizens United. Citizens United did say, you can't deny it, that corporations have a right to free speech as well. Okay, they have a right to free speech. It might not be opinions that you agree with. I certainly don't agree with BDS. I think it's a stupid cause. I don't agree with the spirit or the methodology of them. I go into a lot of the strong-arming tactics of other BDS activist groups like the SJP up here. I can show you this video at UC Irvine.
Hebrew. Propagating murder is not an expression of free speech. Guilty of 101 years.
And the person who's signing off
You
on the
are
cell phone.
accomplice to genocide.
Hey, you sellers, you can't hide! Hey, you sellers, you can't hide! We charge you with genocide!
police!
Fight the police!
Fight the police!
I can't believe that we actually need a police escort to go out of a school.
And last night, we went to disrupt their event to let them know that we refuse to allow the normalization of their presence here. Administration told us not to disrupt, that we have to be civil.
I have been a faculty member here for 26 years. This is no way for our undergraduate students to behave. Shame on you.
Okay, so that's from Canary Mission, and Canary Mission does a number of things that I think are kind of ethically questionable, such as doxing people. So I'm not going to say that I endorse everything they do, but a lot of the information they put out is accurate. It's found footage from these events, and the fact is that there's basically an anti-free speech current within the BDS movement itself. The BDS movement is one of these groups that will probably tell you, well, we don't believe in hate speech being covered by the First Amendment. Okay, and you actually heard one of the protesters express such a sentiment in that video. So I would say that what am I proposing? These laws are going to be a failure, in my opinion. Okay, I could be wrong. I think that they don't benefit either the free speech atmosphere of the United States. I think that that's a sacrosanct value of our country. It's something, I talk to people from Canada and they're like, well, of course you need to, this is hate speech. How could you let BDS happen? Well, when you say something they'll be considered hate speech, I'm not going to defend you then. Should I defend you when you do something considered hate speech? If you try to get these people, locked up or whatever due to hate speech or have their careers affected, whatever. Look, I'm not trying to tell people that the arguments that BDS puts forward are valid. I'm not trying to tell you that what they're doing on campus is appropriate behavior. The BDS and associated movements that support BDS are just as much a part of the toxic atmosphere in university education in the country as any of the other groups, like the ones in Missouri that basically wrecked the college, the ones at Evergreen, the ones at Cal, the ones, you could pick any of these campuses, not just in the United States, by the way, extending into Canada. I know people that are directly affected by it. In fact, somebody who's affiliated with King David's Journal, I might actually have one day for a podcast. So I think it's unfortunate that we have to address an issue of very poor strategy. Putting forward a law that could be struck down as unconstitutional because it abridges the First Amendment rights of Americans, however, whether they're wrong or right, is not the approach to dealing with an anti-free speech movement, okay? It's the same, by the way, I've had to argue with people over the Charlottesville march, over past marches by far-right people, and I've said to them, you can complain till you're blue in the face about the fact that there are neo-Nazis and white supremacists that are able to march in these places. But that was settled in a court case called Brandenburger versus Ohio. That was in the 60s already. Brandenburg versus Ohio in 1969. The court case decided basically unanimously by the Supreme Court, allowing Ku Klux Klan members to march in Ohio. And that, by the way, that decision included Thurgood Marshall, the first black Supreme Court justice. Okay, so you can complain all you want about these people being allowed to speak. It's been upheld time and time again. Brandenburg was the first. There were numerous other ones that would follow. So, what would be my approach? Okay, so I talk a lot about what are ways not to oppose these types of movements. The best way for somebody to oppose a group that they disagree with is basically being enacted with Patreon right now. A lot of these people who are opposed to the censorship of Sargon, for example, are canceling their their Patreon accounts. By the way, I think I might cancel mine this week. So, it'll be interesting how I'm going to contribute and receive. I don't really receive contributions, but you get the idea. You go and you revoke whatever contributions you make to people you don't like. And furthermore, if you're talking about universities, what you could do is you could campaign among the donors. There are a lot of donors, by the way, who would probably oppose the beliefs and methods of the BDS movement. Either oppose the message or oppose the methods. And you go to them and you say, well, this college is sustaining these people. Some of the faculty are involved in it. Some of the administrators might be involved in it in whatever way. And you make the case to them, look, you want to build a sustainable and fruitful higher education system, higher education institution. And what are you creating instead? You're creating this social cancer. You should not contribute to this cause. You should probably dedicate your philanthropy to a more worthy cause. That's the way I think you get it done. And that's about it. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel. Sorry for the coughing. Subscribe to the Cocoscope and BitChute channels. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Please also follow me on all the social media below, Gab, Minds, etc. And take it easy. See you the rest of Sunday.